Hello. Wanted to thank everybody that showed up for tonight's show, and we'll kind of begin just a little bit to give a couple people some time to show up. But obviously, there's going to be people watching this afterwards as it's a recorded thing as well. So just wanted to let you know, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, please, and hit that notification bell so anytime I do any content, you get notified what's going to happen. And so tonight is the 10th. Well, today is the 10th of the Sandy Hook Massacre or the Newtown Massacre. Took place in Newtown, Connecticut, and the school within the town was the elementary school, which was kindergarten through fourth grade school. And so, anyways, today is the 10th anniversary of that massacre and that shooting. So we wanted to memorialize that and understand a little bit more as the show goes why that's even more important to me and Joe here, and another guest we're going to have on, Jim, have a special significance to those days and what's happened since those days. So, wanted to talk about what happened, but before I do that, let me since you got him there looking at you and you're looking at him, let me introduce Joe. Joe is Joe. We've worked together in this stuff for years, and I'm not exactly sure with absolute certainty what your title is. So what are regarding faster?
Oh, I go by the program director. It's like a lot of things, made up title that when somebody asks. So
Sure,
whatever
sure,
needs
understood.
done.
Right. Um, yeah. So I mean, I know me and those that work with you, we call you and Jim co-directors, but I've never seen that written down. I don't think anywhere, unless I was the one wrote it down, or I don't even know where that comes from. So I didn't. We don't do a whole lot of as a group. So I wasn't sure, but for the audience to understand, Joe is indeed the man that makes it all happen in at its root level, at its foundation level. If it wasn't for the things he does, the things you're going to hear that we've done since Sandy Hook tonight, none of that would be happening if it wasn't for Joe. So, and I'm sure he would say otherwise, but he's wrong. So, in case, so it's a very somber day in the minds of those
Team
of us that
effort.
remember it. Yep, yeah, it is. But there'd be no team, and there'd be nowhere for us to put our effort. I personally say, if it wasn't for the founding work that you do. We'll talk more about that later, of course. But so we wanted to talk for those that don't know what Sandy Hook is. It's when we just say the words, right? To a big chunk of the American population, I think to everybody probably 20 years old and older, those words mean something, like saying 9/11. And there are people that it doesn't mean anything to. Like today, I mentioned it a few times at the school where I work, and the kids were like, "What? Huh?" And a lady that was like 22 that was in the office when I mentioned it, she immediately knew what it was, what grade she was in when it happened. And so it has significance to a lot of us and not as much to others. Joe, from say the other side of the country where what we do. Hey, Kelly, thank you. Thanks for being here and totally understand and appreciate it. We're not here to make it any more emotional than it just is, but we'll also be talking about a lot of very hopeful things. So if you can try to hang on to get to those parts, that would be good. But in any case, uh, it means a lot to a lot of people, but a lot isn't, and it's more significant because of certain reasons to me and Jim and Joe. Jim's going to be in here in just a minute, but so I just wanted to give a brief overview of what it was to familiarize the audience as to what we're talking about and why we're talking about it. So on December 14th, 2012, there was a man, and it's kind of a policy of ours that the murderers, the killers, we don't mention their names. We don't want to glorify their names. The media does enough of that. For instance, when I went to Wikipedia today to just look up, refresh myself with a lot of facts, I was just telling Joe here before the show started, I expected they would have a list of the loved and lost, and instead, I had a small autobiography of the murderer and no list of kids. Yeah, I see you, Jim. We're good. No list of the kids. So it's still a problem. And Joe and Jim have more, all of us collectively remember little things. Time magazine would put little tiny pictures around the edge after of those that were, and the giant pictures middle were the killers. So starting way back, we took a policy of not using their names and finding ways to glorify their memory go as little as we could. So it's one of those methods. So on that morning, there was a young man that had been disturbed, and you can go online and look up all about him, or all that we know of. I don't know if you can hear. I don't know what's going on there. But anyways, one of the things I learned today is that he started off the day, of course, we know, it's very well known that he killed his mother. So two things I found out about that is he killed her with a .22. Never heard that before. As well as after he killed his mother, he then destroyed all the hard drives in the house. That's the part I'd never heard at all before. And that's one of the reasons we've heard so little about motivations or what may have been going on with him. Well, sorry, Kelly. As you know, and I think you were, been having all kinds of technical difficulties and can't quite figure out what it's on. I'm on a different computer tonight even. I don't think the internet, but it could be. This one's hardwired into the internet. This is not Wi-Fi. So I don't know. We'll see. But anyways, this disturbed young man got up for whatever reason, which we don't know his motives, killed his mother, then went to the school. And at approximately 9:35, he shot his way into the side windows beside the door. So one of the things we as an organization, Faster Saves Lives, mention quite a bit is that, this school, from what I've read anyways, had just put in, well, that's not a good sign. This school had just put in a security door, a bulletproof glass or bullet resistant glass or whatever. But they didn't the side windows, those small side windows beside main doors, they left them all. So he just shot out the side windows and walked in at approximately 9:35. At approximately 9:35 and 39 seconds, the first call went in. 3606, the 911 dispatcher broadcasts it, where the shooting's at and what's going on. Then at 9:37:38, Connecticut State Police dispatched. 9:39 even, the first Newtown police arrived. So we're talking 4 minutes for to arrive. 13 seconds, 2 more Newtown officers arrive. 40:03, so now we're talking a little over 5 minutes. The last shot was heard, believed to be the killer's suicide. 9:42 and 39, you had Newtown police reports his license plate. Then at 9:47, the Newtown police entered the school. One officer, the officers did. And then at 46 after, 3 Connecticut State arrived. It's 11 minutes. And then 9:46, Connecticut State Police entered, which was, over 2 minutes after local police did. So that's a brief understanding of what went on there. And we have 20 children were killed. Let's see here. Sorry, I should have had it down in front of me. He shot and killed 26 people. 20 of the victims were children between the ages of 6 and 7, and 6 more were adult staff members. I already mentioned what he did before he even began that. So I wanted to do next, before we get into our panelists here, is I just wanted to take this moment to memorialize a little bit, to mention the names of those lost. If you were with me for the Pearl Harbor Day remembrance that I did a few days ago, you heard my lecture on memory, or remembering. I'm sorry. I'm a guy that believes the Bible, right? You may not recognize it if you watch live, but I do. And there's two holiday the Bible commands us, or 2 things the Bible commands us to set aside days to do. And so I always ask people, kind of a little trivia thing. I say, what are the 2 holidays commanded by the Bible? And people will say Christmas and Easter. Those are the 2 I always get. And there's nowhere in the Bible does it say to celebrate those. I'm not saying it's against it in any way, but in no way does it tell us we need to. But there are 2 days to set aside days to do. One is set aside a day to give thanks. We do that in America with Thanksgiving. The other day that it tells us to set aside is to set aside days to remember. And we do that Memorial Day. So all throughout the Bible, I believe you see, and plus I'm a history guy, right? So there's all kinds of things in my life. I spend time remembering, and I see the value of remembering. And so I wanted to go through these names of the lost, and I'll bring Jim in and introduce Jim and Joe to you, and we'll get talking about what's happened since then, lessons we've learned, and what's happened since. So I'm just going to read these names just in memory. Dylan Hockley, Jessica Ricos, Anna Marquez Green, Madeline Shue, Olivia Engel, James Mattioli, Catherine Hubbard, Josephine Gay, Emil Parker, Caroline Pravidi, Aviel Richmond, Allison Wyatt, first grade school teacher Vicky Soto, school psychologist Mary Sherlock, actually ran evidence, Principal Dawn Hawksburn, and Rachel Davino, a behavioral specialist, teacher Lauren Rousseau, special ed teacher Anne Marie Murphy. So that one part there where, or maybe eyewitness, I'm not sure, that one teacher actually ran to the killer, trying to stop to protect kids. So that's an important part of what we're going to talk about later. So anyways, let me go ahead and bring on Jim. Will explain to you why he's audio only. Can you hear us, Jim? Is everything cool?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Maybe not.
Wait.
Yep. You can hear him, Joe? We all good?
I hear him. Yes,
Hey.
I hear him.
Good.
Well, welcome, guys, and thanks for having me, Tom. I appreciate it.
The president of Buckeye Firearms Foundation. Buckeye Firearms Foundation owns a program called Faster Saves Lives. Faster Saves Lives. We'll get into here more. But let's see. Talk about the event. One of the things I wanted to get into after I so just out of curiosity, can anyone, if that's a problem, I'll just turn my camera off if you can. Anyways, lessons learned, and then what we've done since then, and then the history of what we've done, why we're doing it, and where we are today, and then we'll question and answers for anybody that's in here. So, Jim, won't you go ahead? I let Joe tell everyone basically who he was, so I'm gonna let you do the same.
Well, I'm an airline pilot, and I am the president of Buckeye Firearms Foundation, and I get to call. I call myself the luckiest person on earth because I get to call. Really, I have the greatest circle of friends that I think any person can have, including you two, but also Mr. John Benner and Andrew Blubaugh and Dr. Dick Castor and Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman and all of these, Ron Borsch, all of these people who've helped us build and shape this program and really change the world on this stuff. It is the road that we've traveled over the last 10 years is staggering, and it's absolutely unbelievable what has happened, and hats off to you guys for everything you've done to make this happen. It's neat, but it didn't start out that way for me.
Right.
10 years ago tonight.
Right. So go ahead.
But I went, well, you know what? First, let me One thing I have to get out of the way. The reason, folks, the reason I'm not on camera, it's for you, not for me. Tom's trying to build his subscribers, and he said I can't show my ugly face. No, that's not quite true. It might be true, but
Close.
I am only going to stay on for a limited time. I had sinus surgery today, so I'm nothing anyone wants to look at tonight. And I have to be a little bit reserved in this stuff, which is hard for me. But one thing I want to point out is, like, this is a difficult topic. This is hard to talk about. But there's lessons and things in here that will make us uncomfortable, that make people on all sides uncomfortable, and that's okay. So I know there's some people who simply aren't going to be able to get through it, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong. If you can't, that's fine. I understand that. But I want to encourage anybody, if you hear stuff that makes you go, that's crazy, that's wrong, that's stupid, that's icky, I don't want to hear that. That's a clue to you that we need to peel another layer of this onion back. Maybe you don't do it all tonight, but we have done our children a great disservice in our country because the adults who are in charge of our children's lives have turned off what you're going to hear tonight. They have said, it makes me too uncomfortable. I'm not going to listen to it. And what I challenge those to do is think about the staff at Sandy Hook watching their coworkers and the kids in their custody be murdered. Think about the children. Think about the parents of the children in Sandy Hook and what they've had to deal with over the last 10 years. And think about the children who were in those rooms and the horror and the terrible way that they died, with the adults that had promised them safety failing to protect them. And some of them gave their own life. I'm not putting down that staff at all. They were not trained properly. We can get into that. But we as a nation need to understand what happened and learn from these lessons so that we do not make them tomorrow and next month and next year. We, the adults, need to do a better job of protecting those innocent children in our care and custody. Our schools have got to step up to the plate. And as parents or any community member who pays taxes, your tax dollars need to be used appropriately to save the kids. Because guess what? The damage does not stop with the children who die. The carnage ripples out so much bigger than almost anyone understands. And if you don't even care about kids, if you're that calloused, understand there's few things tied closer to your home value than your reputation of your school. Sandy Hook happens in your city, your town, your home values are going to take a huge hit. It will hit you personally in the pocketbook, even if it doesn't tear your guts out. So
much.
Yeah. So anyway, I can't get too animated. Otherwise, my sinus surgery starts using blood and it gets ugly. And if that's icky to you, hang on, it'll get worse. So anyway, that's. I'll be brief.
I wanted to say to Kelly, Kelly didn't say that about hey, if it's uncomfortable, you need to stay with it. He didn't, before earlier today when he and I spoke, that he was going to say that. So that was not directed at you, just in case you may have interpreted it that way. Even though you did say what you said earlier in the chat, he was saying that specifically pointed at you all. He was planning on that.
Yes, and I'll tell you what, I'll go even further than that. Kelly, by her comments in her chat, admits that she's got some issues on this. Number one, hats off for clicking in to listen and try, because that tells me something really cool about her. Number two, everybody out there, take a lesson from Colonel Grossman. Everybody needs help sometime, only the strong could admit it. So the fact that Kelly's willing to post in a public forum, this is difficult for me, hats off in a whole new way. And a second way, set an example who all of us should be, because all of us sometimes need a help. All of us sometimes need a hand. And number one, don't be afraid to ask. And number two, if somebody around you needs help, help them. Even if they don't ask, if you see signs, ask them, hey, do you need a hand? We are all in this together. And all of us sometimes need a hand getting through this stuff. So that the reason why you need help is because you're a good person and you care. If you didn't, this would be easy. So just know that about yourself. And that's how I feel about Kelly and anybody else out there who's in that same boat and feeling those same emotions. That is not something to be ashamed of. That is something to be proud of. Anyway, hey, one other thing I wanted to add to your timeline, Tom.
You just
About 45 minutes after we got into the whole Sandy Hook stuff, somebody said, hey, did anybody ever bring the medics in? And they all went, no. And one cop who's dual trained just transitioned without permission because it needed to get done. Now that's not that this incident may be so bad it wouldn't have mattered anyway. I don't know, but understand that's how things go in these some things sometimes. And read Why Meadow Died if you want to see what happens when the medics aren't there. I mean, it's just it's horrible what goes on in our schools and the response we get. And don't blame the medics who aren't there. Don't blame the cops who aren't there. Don't blame the teachers who are doing everything they can, whether they win or lose that battle. Blame the administration for not appropriately training their staff and coming up with a realistic plan for the very real threat that they may face. That's where the problem lies, in my opinion. So, anyway,
especially now, especially after we've some overlap going on both. What was that, Jim? Go ahead.
So, my two last points are, let me go back to 10 years ago tonight. I am not a person who gets angry very often. It takes a long way for me to really get angry. But 10 years ago tonight, I had dealt with media, I dealt with all the stuff, and I went to bed just absolutely devastated, angry. And my wife asks me, why are you so angry tonight? And I looked at her and I said, because 6 adults and 20 little kids died at Sandy Hook today, and nobody gives a damn. And she goes, you're wrong. What do you mean nobody cares? It's all like, anybody is talking about. Yeah. It is all anyone is talking about. And I said, yeah, they're talking about it, but they don't care. Because if anybody cared, they'd do something about it, not talk about it. And this is going to be like every other one that we've ever had. Everybody's going to talk about it. We'll hold candlelight vigils. We'll have town halls. We'll have pro-gun and anti-gun talking points. We'll have news stories out the yin-yang. We'll talk about all the stuff around it. But no one is actually going to do anything to help or prevent the next killing. That is why I'm mad. And I went to bed mad at the world. And I woke up the next morning and I had emails from a couple other people that started to show me maybe I was wrong. And over the next couple days, I couldn't have been more wrong. I was just dead wrong on how things were going to play out. And we announced at a town hall that we were going to do a class, and we were going to offer it to free for school staff. And media mocked us and said, do you think, look, teachers don't want to carry guns. This whole thing's insane. Do you even think you'll get 24 people to sign up for your class? And I said, I don't know, but we're going to find out. And in about 3 weeks, we had about 1,000 people sign up. And I'll bookmark that. One guy had been a cop for, I think, 10 years. He had transitioned from law enforcement to teaching. He said, I carry a gun every place I go, except in the classroom to protect my children. And I thought, well, no one thinks that's good policy. You're in the class. The other end of the spectrum was a woman who I would love to talk to tonight, but she wrote something to the effect of, I don't own a gun. I've never shot a gun. I'm afraid of guns. I have friends tell me I'm anti-gun, but I will do anything to keep my kids safe. Could you help someone like me? And so I called her and we chatted for 20 minutes, and she decided being armed staff was not the right role for her. But she's one of the most important people I've ever met in my life. She fundamentally changed me as a person in 20 minutes, because what she showed me is the love that she and other school staff had for our kids. And I've seen that over and over the years, but she was the first one that really touched a nerve in me. She was willing to face a primal fear. She was willing to do her most uncomfortable things to make somebody else's kids safe in her classroom. That is some kind of special. And I think we need to recognize there are people of all different colors, sexes, religious beliefs, political spectrum, everything like her in our schools, in our classroom. And all they're asking for is help to do a better job protecting our kids. And I think we owe that to them. So I will leave you guys tonight by saying, I wish I could join you for the whole thing, but for those who are here, I just want to tell you that I don't know that there's anyone in the country that has spent the time with teachers, with administrators, with school board members, with maintenance and IT staff, with the attorneys, with some legislators, with the trainers, with the medical professionals, with the parents, than Joe Eaton. He brings a perspective and a base of knowledge in understanding this thing and how the pieces fit together that I really don't think anybody else on earth has. So how cool it is to have him on. And a great guest is pointless if you don't have a great host. Tom Hall, who is also someone who's been in this forever, and he knows the ins and outs from the teachers and schools and parents and instructor and student and all of these other sides for them to have a discussion. And I think 10 years from now, when we look back on this, and there's however many million things, I think it will be very cool for the people who are listening live to be able to say, I was there that night. I heard it live. Because you two individuals, I think, are perfect to do this. And I think I think people are smiling down on heaven tonight, from heaven. And God bless the two of you for doing this. I wish I could hang with you, but my physical condition dictates otherwise. So I will watch and listen, and you guys have a great show. God bless both of you, everybody listening.
Go take care of your face, because me and Joe got to look at that in the future.
All of the school staff who sacrifice so much for our kids. Hey, thanks, guys. Good night.
Wow.
Yeah, me and Joe can testify that Jim is insanely passionate about this subject, and him and Joe are, in my opinion, the two engines that make all this go. So what we're going to talk about now is what happened after. So there was Sandy Hook, and Jim gave a great segue from the event into what I want to go to, and that is, what happened after. And the basis of what happened next was what he said, those emails. And then Buckeye Firearms, because they were in the state of Ohio, a state recognized Second Amendment group, training group, in terms of we did things like youth shoes and other things, or fashion. of Ohio. So whenever this happened, people began to contact Jim, and I don't know if they sent, because Jim was technically, or it still is technically, the president. So they were contacting Jim. I don't know if they contacted Joe right off that bat the first day or not. But so basically, it was all of a sudden there was people from around the state saying, "What are we going to do about this?" And as you just heard him say, he thought nobody would actually do anything. Next thing you know, he has all these people saying, "What are we going to do?" And so he started figuring out what could be done. And I'll let Joe hey Kyle, great to see. I'll let Joe give you the history of the creation of Faster Saves Lives from that point. But before let me say Faster stands for Faculty Administrator Safety Training and Emergency Response. So we're a nonprofit. Foundation is a nonprofit firearms educational organization, and Faster is a program owned by Firearms Foundation, and that is Faculty Administrator Safety Training and Emergency Response. And it also, now I've always suspected, Joe, that it's an acronym looking for something to mean, in terms of the whole Faster Saves Lives is the point. The idea isn't we're replacing enforcement. We're not saying we're replacing background checks. We're not saying we're replacing great police response times or great security in the school system. We're not going to replace school resource officers or armed security or any of the other things that people say, well, you should do this instead. Well, we don't believe in either or. If you talk about peeling back the onion, Saves Lives is the tiniest piece inside the onion. It is when every failed, we would love somebody here that can bond, that's on the scene the moment that's happening. And what will save lives? That's where the name comes. Joe, you don't need to go into the history of the name if you don't want, but I just wanted to give people watching who don't know what we are, and people that'll watch later on, of course, but give them history, if you don't mind, of how it happened and where it came from. So I just wanted to talk about before we started telling them how it came to be. So
yeah, Jim summed a lot of it up. What we found is most of us felt totally helpless listening to the news accounts come in and hearing about the devastation that happened in Sandy Hook Elementary School. And you can imagine what the staff and the people directly involved with it, how helpless they felt. And a lot of teachers certainly could empathize with that, looking at these young kids, seeing their own students in there and, feeling just as helpless. Because I know if you would have went into Sandy Hook Elementary School and asked them that morning, are you guys prepared for an event like this? Because Sandy Hook was not the first type of these mass killings inside of the schools. The age of the students did make this one particularly horrific, but Sandy Hook Elementary School was doing everything that they could have at that point in time. They had a single point of entry in their schools. The doors automatically locked at 9:30. They had sign in and sign out. As you said, they actually had psychiatrists on staff at the school. They were doing all of these overlapping layers that we need to do ahead of time to help detect these issues, to deter them from happening in a school, or even to deflect them from one school to one that may not be as prepared. But what they didn't have in place, and where the helplessness came in, is when all of that preparedness went out the window, when somebody outside the school came in, shot out the front window, walked through and started murdering staff and students. And at that point, they had no options, and they were totally helpless, waiting on outside help to get there. That's something that schools were not comfortable with. And, you have to praise the Sandy Hook Police Department. They had 3 officers in the parking lot within 3 minutes and 16 seconds, which is an amazingly fast response time. And, there's a police department telling you or your school they can guarantee you they will be there in 3 minutes. Number one, they're lying, because they just can't guarantee they'll be there that fast. But even if they could guarantee they'd be there in 3 minutes, we still lost 20 babies and 6 adults in that 3 minutes of time that it took them to get there. And that can't be acceptable to anybody else anymore.
Right.
You know, the Faster Saves Lives program, as Jim said, was a direct result
Right.
of these murders at Sandy Hook, and the Buckeye Firearms Foundation. You know, we were invited to a town hall to go give our sound bites. The anti-gun people were there to give their sound bites. And as he said, nobody was doing anything except for talking. And that's when we committed to the funding for the first class. We announced it at the town hall in Columbus, Ohio. And, you know, we scheduled it for the spring. By the time we had our first class in March of 2013, you know, the waiting list was over 3,000 staff deep from across the country. You know, we had donors calling from California, writing 5-figure checks saying, you know, this will never happen in our state, but we want the schools where it can happen to be safe. You know, we had staff member after staff member saying, you know, I'm a geology teacher. The only thing I have is I've brought in a box of rocks and I keep them in my school classroom. And I've already planned, if something like this happens, I'm handing rocks to all of my students to throw at the person when they come in the room. So, you know, we started meeting and talking to all of these teachers that already have this tremendous loving care for the students. They already have the right mindset and the right heart set that they're going to do anything they can to keep these kids safe. And, you know, that's what we ask them. You know, what are you guys comfortable with? I can say with 100% certainty that in every school building in the United States right now, there's at least one staff member that no matter what your policy says, no matter what you've trained them, no matter what you've threatened with, just like the Mary Sherlock and the Don Hucksprung at Sandy Hook Elementary School, if somebody comes in and starts murdering the staff and students, they're going to go stand between somebody with a rifle and these kids. And they're going to give up the last few seconds of their lives to buy these kids a few more minutes. It happens in every one of these events. And those are the people that we go out and we talk to, and the schools find, and they ask them, what are they comfortable with? You know, some of them, as Jim said, this isn't a program for everyone. And, you know, they want nothing to do with this. Some of them want the trauma medical training, which is a huge part of this.
Right. The late Jim was talking about, didn't she say, okay, I want to do something, but the gun part is not something I can do. And didn't we then make sure she got extra training on the medical care? And we told her to just keep up with that.
That's a huge part of it.
Want to do something and they're not comfortable with the gun. You know, we get the criticism all the time from the media. Yeah.
It's the firearms are such a small part of the overall solution.
And no, it's only volunteers. Yeah, only volunteers. And yet everybody should be training 20, 30, 40 more that can care. Educator, thanks for being here, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and that's basically what we do. If the staff are willing,
that we had that one lady, and I think it's the one he was mentioning, but yeah.
So, you know, let's get them trained and give them options, and, you know, let them not feel as helpless. And so that's what the Faster Saves Lives program does. Our first level one is a 3.5 day long curriculum of firearms, general crisis, emergency management training, and trauma medical training that gets them to a minimal acceptable level where, you know, I would be comfortable myself with my kids, or well, now my grandkids, being in a classroom with teachers that have shown proficiency at the level that we've got. And again, it's not an end all or be all. It doesn't replace the police or law enforcement or the EMTs or the SROs. It simply buys the students and staff that extra 5, 10, 15, you know, 60 minutes, such as we saw at Uvalde, until the professionals can get there and get them the aid that they need. And that's how you save lives in these situations. You put all the other overlapping layers in front of it. So hopefully you can detect these individuals ahead of time. You can deter them from getting into the school, but you have to have a way of defending the innocent people that are in the school should everything else fall apart.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny because people constantly, I mean, we've been doing this now for 10 years and we see the exact same criticism. It's so, you started putting recently, the last couple of months, you started paying for Facebook to spread, right? So as you know, we get crazy comments on our post because they go outside of our normal followers and community. So actually we'll get some really crazy people coming on there, and the crazy ones always have one of the exact same things to say. And it's like we're trying to force a gun on every teacher. So that's one thing all the time that's not true. The other thing is that we believe in some sort of either or. And I already mentioned this, but just to reiterate it, we don't believe in either or. We believe in whatever mental health issues that we can do. We believe in security, keeping them off the property, period, before they can even get anywhere to threaten the building at all. We believe in school resource officers being there. People always want to talk about veterans and so forth. Sure, if there's a veteran and the school wants them, and they can find a way to make that work, yeah, bring in the veterans. We're cool with that. Even volunteer parents, if they've got proficiency or whatever, and the background checks, all those things, we're for all of that. We're for all of it. But in the end, all of those things one day will fail. And when they fail, we hope that they're a teacher, 6 at Sandy Hook that were tonight. There were 6 of them, 6 adults he had to go through, or well, 2 of them are teachers, 4 adults he had to go through to get to the first kid. And we know that 2 of those adults to stop him, and they had no chance. And we simply want to take those that volunteer and give them a chance if they choose, because that's the other thing we get accused of, to a teacher's career. No, first off, these are volunteers. Second off, they have no extra duty. And that's, as you know, Joe, that's very important when it comes to the law and when it comes to teachers' unions and things like that. They have duty. Essentially, legally, what they become is an extra trained concealed carrier at their workplace. They can still choose to do nothing. They have no duty.
That's exactly
what that volunteer aren't going to choose to do nothing.
Made it easy for a lot of schools because, they found out that when we started off, probably over half of the people that were applying already had teachers and staff members applying, already had a concealed carry license, and were carrying every other hour of the day when they're out in the public at the grocery stores and at the parks and the movie theaters and church events, except for the 8 or 9 hours a day when they were in the schools. And, it really was easy once you could talk to the schools to say, listen, they're already doing this safely every other hour of the day. How much more sense does it make if they're willing to do that for their own family and the people around them when they're in public, and they want to do this for the kids? Let's get them that extra training to allow them to safely and efficiently have these firearms in the schools. And, that was a part of what really opened a lot of eyes to the administration. When we started, I thought it was really going to take a grassroots effort from the bottom up, from parents and teachers going in and demanding of the school boards and administrations that they look at adding this layer of security in there. Thankfully, the schools, they have done a great job of educating themselves on this issue over the years, a large majority of them. And, they understand that nothing is going to be 100%, but it is their responsibility to put everything in place that's within their control. And, the truth of the matter is the odds of this happening in any given school district are also almost so minuscule that you could excuse a school board for ignoring it. But then you have to balance that against the extreme devastation should an event like this happen in your school. And as Jim alluded to, it's not just the victims that are in the school. It's the family of the victims. It's the other people that are in the schools. It's the entire community that suffers in this. I was talking to a gentleman whose daughter went to Arapahoe High School out in Colorado where there was a shooting, and Claire Davis was the only victim out there in that one, fortunately. But he was commenting that, so many of the students in that school that were straight A students 2 years later were struggling to even graduate because they were still carrying the wounds and the burdens of, what had occurred in their school, even though they weren't directly victims or weren't directly involved in it. And, that's a lot of what gets overlooked is, it's a shame Wikipedia doesn't even focus anymore on the 26 victims that are there, but spends all the time on the murderer that committed the crime. But the victims go so far beyond that. And that's what, we've got to look at limiting that number as much as possible. And, going back to the name of the program, Faster Saves Lives, our tagline is simply, you know, time is all that matters. You ask any expert out there, how do you save lives once that first shot hits that first victim? And everyone will tell you there's two things that you have to do. First, you have to stop the killing as soon as possible. And that's by having somebody immediately there with the tools and training that can confront the killer and stop the killer, or even if they can't stop the killer, to change their focus from the innocents to the person that's confronting them, or to chase them out of the building, or to force them to commit suicide. So the first thing you've got to do is stop the killing. The second thing that you've got to have is the ability to stop the dying, to have the medical tools and training inside the schools. So once the killing is stopped, you can immediately start rendering medical aid while you're waiting on the outside help to get there. And, you know, that's part of the whole thing that goes together. In the 10 years that we've had Faster Saves Lives running now, we've trained over 3,000 school staff from almost 300 school districts across 22 different states. And, you know, there's not another organization in the United States that has that long of a history or has trained that many staff. In that entire period of time, and the millions and millions of man and woman hours of staff carrying, is, you know, we've only had one school member that's ever had to draw their firearm as part of he was a principal at the school. But on the flip side of that, we've had 5 reports of people using the medical training, with 2 of those being lives saved with tourniquet application. So, you know, the school staff want to make a difference, and we're just giving them the ability and the training and the tools to make that difference.
Absolutely. Yeah. Give people, you know, it's one thing I noticed more years. First stop the killing, then we stop the dying. And I guess it's lessons learned as we go on too. People that we deal with, they sort of in the fold goes, we spend a lot, we're slowly seeing the ratio, the comparison of firearms versus trauma medical care. It feels like the medical care is rising in proportion, which is good. That's not a bad thing. But yeah, I noticed that we talk about that a lot more. So yeah, it's a multifaceted program. It's guns, it's crisis management. In other words, after the killing, after the threat's been eliminated, how to handle all the things in between that and the end of the unit. We deal with that, and have scenario training. State we go to, we require the law enforcement standard is. Sorry about that, Chad. That's just the way it is. But our people, the legislator, Joe, that's our local police captain. So yes, it is out of Ohio Officer Training Academy. But all we focus on is a very few, whereas law enforcement goes through OPATA to do videos and multitude of that. Learn, our people are just focused on very, 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 because they're not cops. They don't to deal with the raid. Need to arrest, you know, they're just to stop the killing, stop the dying, and the arrival of law enforcement as well. Very subset to a janitor or a lunch lady or a school board. Very small subset of that. People want to compare to law enforcement and poo-poo how many times over have compared what we do. When you run and compare it apples to apples, it's either extremely comparable or it actually exceeds what law enforcement gets, because we're not teaching AR-15. We're not teaching a multitude of handguns. You know, we're teaching what they bring and what their school. All right, Terry. Appreciate you being here, man. Appreciate that. Thanks for showing up. You know, we have a very small subset of skills we're teaching, and we're not teaching all the things that law enforcement have to learn. So when you compare apples to apples, the training is extremely consistent with law enforcement, and often, based on which state we're in, exceeds that training as well. So where are we at currently, Joe? That's where I wanted to head next. We've talked history, and we've talked what we are and why we are. So where are we? What's the state of affairs on what we do?
Well, we're based here in Ohio, so most of our activity occurs here in the state of Ohio. We run most of our full classes during the months of June and July, and we can overflow into August if demand is there. We'll have our schedule out probably for the full classes next week, but outside of Ohio, we've been regularly running classes in Colorado since 2016. We just this year have started trying to get classes running in Arizona. Also, we have done several one-off classes in Indiana and Utah also. And it's very likely we'll be out in Oklahoma also come the spring because, being based here in Ohio and, being an all volunteer nonprofit, it's very humbling when you get a call from a superintendent in Oklahoma that says, listen, I've looked all over the United States. I can't find any training better than you've got. Is it okay if I put 5 of my staff members in a van and send them across the country to take your training? And that started about 3 years ago. They've sent staff members back every year from Oklahoma to come out and train. They've had 2 other schools that they have brought along with them also. And so, that's what we're looking for. When we start seeing that localized demand, we can take this training anywhere there's demand from schools to have the training and, of course, funding to make it happen. And, we're right now there's state laws allow schools to include firearms in their safety plan in about 32 out of the 50 states. There are still some states that will not allow it. But, we've got a long way to go till we get out to all of the states that currently allow it. And if anybody's listening from a state that doesn't allow it, just let us know. We've worked with the legislature in Pennsylvania. We'll be talking to the legislature in North Carolina after they come in after the first of the year with their new Congress, because they've got people there that want to change the laws and give schools this option. And that's all it is an option. They're not forcing schools to do anything. They're simply saying the ones that want to do this, let's give you a way to safely and effectively do it. And, going back to your training thing, I did an interview with, it was a Columbus radio station here yesterday, and that was their whole focus is 24 hours of training enough? And, the truth is, never enough training. You have to keep training. Shooting, the medical, all of these are perishable skills you have to keep up on. But, it's what I explain, and educators and school people get this. If you want to have a successful transfer of knowledge, there's 3 key things that you've got to have. First of all, you got to have willing students that actually want to learn. And that's what we have with these staff that are volunteering to come to this program. The second thing is you find the nation's experts on this topic and let them develop the solutions and the curriculum. And then the third thing is you teach very specifically to that curriculum to get the desired outcomes that you want. And if you've got those 3 things in place, you can do a lot of amazing stuff in just a short period of time. And that sounds foreign to people who in the news media or in the public look and see that a police officer in Ohio needs 700 and some hours of training. How can 24 hours of training be better than that? But, again, the staff that we're training are focusing on one very specific solution, one very specific set of skill sets. And, they don't have all the broad and encompassing driving cars at high speed, how to testify in court, how to collect evidence that has nothing to do with the teacher's role at keeping our kids safe. Right. So, it's the first step. It's very good, as you mentioned, in Ohio.
It's and I know people think of guns different, but it's no different than have fire extinguishers out, and there's a poster hanging above it. At least here's how they work. We do it for everything else, but as this statistical object, which changes all argument and logic, it does have that power. It creates some sort of funky brains in a certain kind of person where they can't apply the same logic they do in everything else in their life. They apply it to the brakes on their car. They apply it to the fire extinguishers and the preventive medicine they may take. If they apply it all over the place, and a lot of them would even apply it in their own home. But good grief, not in a school. And, it doesn't make any sense. So the gun somehow has that method to change brainwaves.
Yeah, that's one thing that I found when I first started meeting with schools, back 10 years ago is, they would prepare and have policies and procedures for every foreseeable emergency that you could think of, from, fires to weather to train derailments to gas leaks to, except for violence. And their plan and their policy was call 911 and wait on outside help. And it really boggled my mind on how they could be so prepared for everything else and just willingly say, nope, that's outside. And, I would ask them, I'd say, so, if you have a swimming pool and you see a kid fall in the swimming pool, are you going to write policy that says our plan is to dial 911 and stand on the side of the pool? I mean, you would be negligent to write a policy like that. No, you're going to jump in the pool. You're going to pull the kid out.
Right.
All the staff is trained in CPR. And then when the professionals get there, you hand them a patient instead of a victim. You've got to look at violence the exact same way. They can't just say that's not my problem, because the school staff are the first responders in this situation. They are there. They have the dog in the fight. They have the long-term relationship with these kids. And, unfortunately, and we're seeing this with Parkland and again at Uvalde, a lot of the outside help that is coming just does not have that heart set and mindset that they need to deal with these situations.
So I think I know some of the answer to this, and I know Jim has thrown an answer there in chat. But Kyle, Kyle, he was in there and he commented about asking about Kentucky and West Virginia. Do you have any knowledge about what we have or have not done? That's, as you know, from my house, I can see one of the states, and from where he lives, he can see both of them. So,
yeah, we have had several staff members come up and train with us. It is something that is permitted in the state of Kentucky to allow that. I'm looking up our cheat sheet now. West Virginia, actually, the law needs changed in West Virginia. There is no way for a school at this point in time to legally allow concealed carry in a school in West Virginia. So we will have to work on the legislature there. There may be other options. We had actually a school from North Carolina sent 5 or 7 people up this year. North Carolina schools cannot authorize either, but they can legally store their firearms in their car while they're at work. And so the school is developing the policy and plan and training the staff until they can get their law changed, that they are securely storing their firearms in their car should there ever be an emergency. Is not a perfect solution, but is still a better solution than calling 911 and waiting minutes after minutes after minutes for help to arrive. And, I applauded them for thinking outside the box. They said, listen, we know that we've got to do much better in the future, but this is all the law will allow us to do right now. And we're going to do everything we can to keep our kids safe. And that is a great mindset and a great way of thinking outside the box and implementing what solutions they can.
Hey, Joe, we're having increasing more problems, and I don't know what's causing it. How about me and yours and see if that helps? I don't even know. Well, I don't even know if I have that option. Well, let me see.
How about what?
No, I'll tell you what, it's work moment, but we were experiencing quite a bit there for a second. I had a comment earlier that it may be weather. I guess there's a lot of weather related stuff going on. I don't know. But anyways, so Kelly is asking, how are you working legislation? The guy that was the majority type. I know you do. If you could address that.
Yeah, Jim is our political wonk that does that. I just support him however we can. But, finding willing legislators that will run good law in a state is the key for it. If people have a relationship with a friendly legislator, we can certainly sit down with them and help them draft good legislation. We had great legislation here in Ohio until a lawsuit was filed by Bloomberg back in 2018 18 against one of our school districts. It resulted in our legislature getting involved and giving us a less than perfect solution at this point. And so we'll help other states not make that same mistake that has been made here in Ohio.
It would help. I just didn't know if we had been, and I don't even know. I'm not even sure I know where. I'm not even sure we know where Kelly's from. Kelly, if you don't mind telling me, are you local here to me, or are you in another state? Where exactly are you? Kelly is someone that has started coming to my live streams because of my connection with Leducator, with Chad, and so it's, I mean, I don't know her directly, but she's been on my a few now, and not sure where you are. Nevada. Okay, yeah. If you or Chad or you, Joe, can mention what we have been doing or have not been doing with Nevada.
Nevada state law already allows it.
Nevada.
So all we need at this point in time is schools that are willing, that are wanting the training. If it's just a small number of staff members, the easiest thing for them to do is to travel here to Ohio. Our foundation will have grants to cover all of their training costs and hotel costs while they're here. And so, you know, that is the most economical thing, to get a couple of them out here, see our program. Once we get enough demand where, you know, if we're looking at 10, 12 people at a time, then it becomes more economically feasible for us to send the trainers to Nevada. So it's really just a matter of getting those first people out to experience it firsthand, because a problem we've got is people don't realize what good professional training is until they experience it. And, you know, our foundation, I've been a firearms trainer for over 30 years. I consider myself good, but that's not good enough for the schools. We actually hire this out to 2 nationally recognized training facilities here in Ohio, one in Colorado, that actually do the training for us. So, you know, this is not just somebody sitting at their kitchen table doing a concealed carry class. When we tell them we are giving them the best trainers available in this nation, that's what we deliver to schools.
Yeah, we got a little bit dropping out to do. You know, it may be, Joe. It actually may be my internet. I don't know later, but we're let's see here. Let me put the ask if we are placing our self-offices, and I understand what I believe I understand you're looking at, Kelly. This is me wrong. This is not really a grassroots test activist thing. Jim is somebody who works with here now, works with the governor, works with the legislature on as well as this issue was related, but not exactly a 2A issue. So we just letters that to, and then we work with them to actually get the law done. Whenever we come in, basically, we're just that say, hey, we want law on ours changed. We want the law on ours allow this for, and if that's the case, maybe they need the law changed to allow whatever may need upgrade what they believe current is. We usually go by invitation because we're an Ohio organization. You know, we're not in the state house of Nevada first time on our feet or whatever. It's just not the way this would work for us. Now, if Nevada residents want to go do that and hey, call the faster safety legislation and work with the issue, got a lot amongst us. We got a lot of experience in getting this done in the state, getting it set up, working with the training company. Said we don't. This is not a kitchen table or all of us in Faster. The last professional trainers. If you, matter of fact, watched my, you were in on the show last night. Chris Arrio, the guy that is the host of the show that we're doing last night, was our one of the companies that we used to train for several years. He's now moved on in his career and doing different things. So he's down in Louisiana, as you saw on the show. But he was one of them. And Tactical Defense Institute here in Adams County, Ohio, nationally recognized training organization. So we know how to run all that. We've got a lot of experience in how to make that happen. And we know people that know the other parts that we don't. So we connect people and we help get legislation written. But so far, like an activist, like I said, that's not above us. It's just nothing we've ever needed to do or wanted to do. We come in by invitation and help make things happen. And the legislative part is almost all Jim.
Yeah, Jim has spent time going to the Pennsylvania legislature. I think it was also Delaware legislature to testify and work with their Congresses on getting laws changed and updated. So, if they're needing help, we're certainly willing to reach out, help with them, work with them however we can.
Kelly's saying she's a I think you meant a strat. I don't think you meant sting. that's a serious misspelling there, Kelly. I'd may say but yeah, we've had several. We even had a guy. It was either this last summer was 8. It didn't even, we're like glad. And that he down in his house use them to protect. Specifically said that to us, but yet he volunteered for the program, showed up to the training, passed the training, said he would do it because the school was allowing that he protect his kids, and for whatever reason he believed his personal beliefs took precedent at home, and he wasn't going to have one at home, or he'd learn to protect his own family. So, I mean, we've had a big, wide political and ideological thinking that have said, I'll do what I need to do to protect kids. And will politics or to change to get, we are an organization, and that is to protect the kids. That's defense. And hopefully what we train people for is never used. We want lines of defense to work. We are not 100% everything else away, which we're fine with all the other layers. After you've peeled them away, we want somebody that's why the name of it's called Faster Saves Lives. Responding quicker and stopping killing, stopping dying faster literally saves lives. So thanks for saying that and letting us know with all the political spectrum when it comes to our students. We obviously all tend to be on the Republican side because of, like Joe, libertarian leaning guy out of the going into and I wish I'd looking, to be honest, because they kind of tick me off more than this is not in terms of, it's not a partisan thing. There we go. That's the right word. It's not a partisan issue to us. It may be political because unfortunately gun political that way, but it is. So we by nature and by necessity are political, and Jim does most of the political work for us. So any other questions from anybody? We never did have a bunch of people. We thought we'd have more. That's okay. It'll be up there for people to watch, and make sure you share this, and see if we can be able to see this information. We're just information. And so I tell you what, Joe, explain a little bit more in detail. Let somebody contacted you today and said, hey, let's, you could give us the Ohio version and give us what next if somebody this to their school district.
Sure. if they've got, first thing we do is make sure they have all the other overlapping layers that we had talked about already in place. If they're not doing the single points of entry, the sign in, the sign out, monitoring social media, training the teachers to look for changes in personality and behavior and all this other stuff, we send them back to get that work done first. But if they're ready for the training, the first thing they've got to do is find the right people. And again, it goes back to looking for people with the right heart set and the right mindset, regardless of what their past experience and history is. And, identifying those people, we do have grants available to schools. If it is a school's first year in the program with us, we have grants of up to $5,000 available for each district. That covers the training, that covers the hotel while they're at the training, and basically can get them 3 to 5 people trained at no cost other than travel costs to the school themselves. Prior to attending our level 1 training, though, they are required to have a concealed handgun license from the state that the school is in. That meets federal law requirement for having a firearm in a school safety zone. And then we also have a 1-day, 8-hour firearms foundations class that we require them to take also. Since there's such a wide variety of concealed carry trainers out there, we've got to get the staff to a base level of firearms proficiency. So when we get them to the professionals at the level 1 training, they're all at the same level and they can take them much further at that point, instead of starting at the very beginning saying, here's where the bullet comes out, here's the slide that you pull back. We cover all that stuff in our foundations class and get them the base skills that they need. At that point, depending on the state law, they may have some other things that they have to do before they can authorize the staff to carry in their schools. But if they do, we also have a level 2 training program. They can come back the following year for more advanced type of training. And then we also have what we call our level 3 training program, where we go into the actual school districts, require them to bring in their local law enforcement, local EMTs, all of the staff that are not part of their ARM program but want the medical and trauma medical training. We train all of the staff for that because they're good to have there for other emergencies. And then we spend the entire weekend working with their local law enforcement EMTs, running scenarios and practice drills in the school buildings. And it's really neat to see the communities come together like that, where the police and the schools and everything are working together to put the safety of the kids first. So, like I said, we run about 6 classes a year here in Ohio at a minimum. We run about 2 to 4 classes regularly in Colorado. We'll probably have 1, maybe 2 in Arizona. And if they want to reach out to us on the fastersaveslives.org website, they can send an email through the contact form. We'll get them all the information and help them along however we can.
Exactly. Anybody asking new questions? So let me give a couple minutes here to see if anyone has any questions. I know I got a couple of friends in, plus a couple of people that showed up from different communities here. And we got Jim in there. And Jim said, biggest mistake is, and I hadn't heard him say it quite this way before, biggest mistake is copying law enforcement training, or copying, I believe is what he meant there. School staff are not cops, don't want to be cops, don't need to be cops, and are not interested in cop training. And I know I had a conversation about this just yesterday with someone, or day before yesterday, explaining to them just how much everybody thinks anybody with a gun, and this is not law enforcement statement at all. No, it's not the standard for anybody in any situation. In classes on a regular basis, introducing myself, and I tell them that I'm military with a specific little psychological manipulation intent. I always say, and this is true, it's number 13 years on active duty in special forces units. Well, most of the time I could just let that sit and people would say, oh my God, he's a special forces guy. Well, I'm not. I was a legal NCO that worked with special forces units and had a specialty in my career. I had what was called a Sierra identifier in my MOS, which said I specialized in working with them and for them. So I was in that community, the Spec Ops community, myself and giving my resume, the firearms instructor. I had and I let it do a little work in their head, and then I tell them, nope, here's what I was, and here's what I am, and then I give them this. You don't want, you don't, let me try this again. You don't need a firearms instructor to be some spec ops guy, to be a SEAL or a Ranger or a former door banger in any branch of the service. You don't need them to be former cops, because guess what? The gun may work the same, when you pulled the trigger. That's, hold on here. Got a little free. Besides that, there's not a lot of conflict. Our society blesses off on military and special powers, right? They don't have to have warrants when they're doing what we told them to do. They go kill bad guys and destroy things. So if they bust down doors and shoot people without a warrant, we hope, and that's what we tell them to do. Law enforcement has duties. Now, they have duties. Not only do they have to have warrants and all that thing and keep the peace, and they got a whole different set of standards, but when the gun does come into play, they've possibly got to arrest somebody. They may have to drag people around in a way. They got to do handcuffs. They got to get on the radio. If a guy runs, they have a duty to chase him. There's all kinds of different things that make the decision making that a law enforcement guy has different than what you would have, Kelly, right? And since you mentioned concealed carry, I'm just using your name here in vain. If I was teaching you, if we were teaching you, we wouldn't be teaching you to call on the radio and use codes, and we wouldn't be teaching you to do high-speed chases and how to do the things that we do on Leducator's channel, where they talk about knocking the cars off the road and all those cop tactics. We wouldn't be teaching that at all, because that's not appropriate to you. As civilians, society has given you a set of things that you can do to defend yourself and innocent others that cops can't do. Cops have a duty to do things that you're not allowed to do. Well, because of those differences, you have everything that leads up to those can be different. What kind of gun you will carry, where you will carry it, how you will carry it, when it's allowed to come into the fight. Cops are allowed to go first. Law enforcement and military go first. If they know something suspicious is going on, they can pull out the gun first. They quote, Old West terms, they have the drop, so to speak. The first time I learned this, I only get to go second, right? Something bad has to happen before Joe, Jim, me, the people we train in schools. They can't just whip out a gun and say, you got detention or whatever, which we get accused of that. That people be crazy with gun schools. And no, they're not. Done if something bad has happened, and that's true of you too. Nothing more than concealed carriers that have had extra excess. I wouldn't say excessive. That makes it sound like it's more than needed. They have an excellent of training, a much higher level of training as a concealed carrier at their workplace. That's all. That's amounts to it all down. They're not law enforcement. So yeah, what Jim's saying here, the biggest mistake is copying law enforcement. We're not trying to copy law enforcement. The deeper you dive in, and like I said, between the different things our society says, those three military, law enforcement, and civil services, it's not even appropriate for us to make them cops. Now, we have school resource officers and law enforcement show up and tell us that it. So, didn't go into that. There's technically there has a conversation here in the chat. We have that a lot in streams, and it's pretty cool. Yeah, Jim talking about we don't want to, and Sandy Hook wasn't a failure of their intent. It was a failure of the system as it was at the time. They were doing what they were told to do. Yeah, even constitutional carry states, which I think, isn't Nevada one of those? But even if people don't understand, is if your state says you don't have to have a concealed carry permit anymore in order to carry on school property, that's a federal law that you have to have the plastic from your state, concealed carry your state. So a lot of people don't realize that, because when you go permitless, of course, you don't have to go to a class. So nobody's telling you anything. Joe threw at the section that allows sorry, you know, things that start channel the things that all the successful channels said, all the stuff I looked up, same thing, and that is just do it and figure it out as you work through the issue. Because I have a personality. I like having every something against that on a regular basis, and this is one of those. So yeah, intermittent. And I know Kyle was on the side here texting me on the side telling me what issues are, and he's probably right. But oh, so you're an open carrier, Kelly. I see that. Yeah, well, yeah, Ohio's an open carry state too, and always has been. It's open carry because there's no law saying you can't. There's no open carry law in the state of Ohio. It's simply, I mean, that's the way America is supposed to work, and this has to do with the subject of a lot of my other discussions on the channel is liberty, and you know, liberty basically says if you've not been prohibited, then you can. So I would suggest, as a person that does this in this industry for a long time, and Joe's done it longer, I would suggest you get a concealed carry permit, because we you know, you carry, but letting the bad guy know that you got a gun before you know who the bad guy is generally considered bad tactics. You don't want the bad guy knowing who you are in the current situation before you know who they are. So I would suggest you get a concealed carry permit. The story.
Plus,
we
politically,
won't go off on that tangent too far. Go ahead, Joe.
It's a numbers game. The politicians see more number of concealed carry licenses. They pay more attention to the Jim Irvines that go into their offices and say, we need to clean up these laws. And it's just, you know, the sad reality. Politicians, that's what they see as votes.
Correct. I know we had Kelly and Kyle, and I know we had a few in here. It's not. Anyone, Joe, I really want to thank you quite a bit for being. Was great. Was great hanging out with you again. We haven't got to do that as much this year as last for whatever various reasons. Thanks, and I think Jim's still here. Thank you, Jim, for being here. Let's see. Jim said not legally in a school zone. I think a constitutional carry. You can't open carry zone. You got to have that concealed carry permit in all 50 states in a school zone. So you can't legally carry in the school zone under permitless carry. You got to comply with federal school zone law, not just school property, but 1,000 foot from the perimeter, including public streets in your own car. As a matter of fact, and when I got my federal firearms license here, and by the way, I've surrendered at FFL anymore. So when I got that counselor or whatever they call the guy that comes to explain how it works, your license works to you, I have a school within 1,000 feet of the address of my FFL. And he was explaining to me how people would have to exit the home legally with their gun, how to go straight to their car, to drive 1,000 feet past. Crazy how it worked. He was about the fact that there was a school within 1,000 feet of the address of the FFL. But anyways, all right. I mean, I usually like to keep them between an hour and a half, and we're an hour and 23 minutes. So I think we're just about right. Thank you very much, Joe, for not only what you've done tonight, but what you've done over the years. I know we don't always say thank you very much for everything you've done. And I've had the pleasure of being with you at school board meetings as well. And you are exceedingly good at that part. And thank you for doing it. And Jim, so heal that face up now. Get that stuff fixed. All right. Let's thank everybody for being here. Do me a favor, share this with Facebook, whatever. Share it around. Let people know what you heard tonight. Give it a like, a subscribe, and hit that notification bell to find out anything. I don't know what's coming up next, so we'll see. But problem, Kelly, we tried our best. and we try to take an uncomfortable topic, but you know, the majority of what we were going to talk about, I knew this ahead of time, was going to be what we're doing afterwards to prevent it, not getting deep into the gory details of what happened then or at any other shooting. Not productive for what we do anyways. We're only here to do, and we only attract people that into those deals for purpose. Thanks for it, Nevada. And if you want help with us, go to the website and contact information there. You'll get him, Joe, or me, and we'll get you any way we can. We'll get this started in Nevada. We're always looking for ways to spread the word, so to speak. So once again, thanks everybody. We'll see you and have a great night. It takes